Noop, thanks very much for joining me today. So I just want to give a little bit of intro to you. So you have a 19-year international track record in working with brands to accelerate commercial growth. You've worked with hundreds of household name brands. There's so many, I can't really name them all, but Coca-Cola, Kraft, Mondelez, Bacardi, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Amazon. So tell me about your company. So Split Second, you help emerging and existing brands to get traction with retailers. So who is it you work with? How does that work?
So we work with brand owners of all sizes. We work with emerging brands. We also work with existing brands. And often the brief comes from sales or marketing senior players in the industry who are trying to get traction with the retailers. And that's where we step in and work with them and their teams to ensure that we turn that around.
So it is an incredibly competitive landscape for brands. A very exciting time for emerging brands, but it's definitely fairly challenging. What are the sort of biggest things they have to look out for at the moment?
So many brands, big or small, I've worked with, they start to think about brand first. And in terms of developing their new products, which is the right thing to do, that's great. But when you're taking it out to market, you need to understand the customer mindset. So who's going to buy your brand? Why should they buy your brand? What are they faced with in the category that they're competing in? And so putting customer at the heart of your plans is essential for success.
I think it sometimes feels very difficult for a challenger brand to be able to, challenge a market leader like those brands we just mentioned. Is it just a daunting prospect? Do they have the opportunity to take market share away from those companies, or do you
Absolutely. It's the challenger brands, it's the niche brands that are chipping away at the market share of the big brands, because those brands are born out of some sort of passion or story that they have of their own. And there's a genuine, authenticity to those brands. There's a lot of other elements that have come into play that have helped propel those brands. There are 5 macro trends right now that are underpinning everything in the market. And there are things like instant gratification. So most of us, we want something right now, available 24/7, premium, indulgence, and so forth. Another big trend is different like me. So the trend of offering something customized and personalized and bespoke like Amazon does. It remembers what you purchased the last time. It offers you something you might want the next time. Another big trend is living the good life. So health and wellness, massive trend. So many emerging brands are tapping into this. Anything from coconut water out there to vitamin water.
Yeah, because I read that last year sale of vegan products, or that 16% of all new products released were vegan.
Vegan is a great example of something that was quite niche at one point, and now it's become a hashtag social movement that you see on Instagram. All the big retailers have a vegan range, veganary. Those kind of things didn't exist 5-10 years ago, whereas now they're perfectly acceptable and in fact quite cool and trendy. And a couple of other trends that I wanted to highlight, the macro trends. One is around the conscious consumer, so the awareness of climate change. There are brands out there that are tapping into social messages. There's a great brand out there called Tony's Chocolonely. It's a Dutch brand that's known as the anti-slavery brand. The brand was actually born out of the fact that 3 journalists went to Sierra Leone. They found that the cocoa plantations were full of child labor, and they want to put a stop to that. So their mission is to stop slavery in the cocoa plantations. And out of that whole process was this chocolate brand was born called Tony's Chocolonely.
That's very much a kind of millennial take on things. They make their purchase decisions based on wider issues, not just whether they like the product or if they like the packaging.
Yeah, so millennials are definitely one group that's driving this change, and with the combination of technology, which brings me on nicely to the last macro trend, which is connectivity. So the millennials want brands that connect with them, not just from a technology point of view through social media and various social platforms, but also, you know, from an emotional perspective. What's going to resonate with me might be totally different to what's going to resonate with you.
You know, it feels to me like an advantage that a smaller brand might have with a swiftly changing trend is that they can react quite quickly because they're a lot more agile.
Having worked with a lot of the big brands, they're also very aware that this movement is happening because they get pressure from the retailers to offer something unique and different, even with a brand that's recognizable. But what are they going to do differently to cater to these new emerging trends? So they're under that pressure as well. And it's all about offering choice to the end shopper.
It's interesting looking at certain brands that have a really strong sense of purpose and differentiate themselves not by their products, but by their reason for being in existence. And I think that for me, I feel like the brands that have that strong sense of why, that the consumer can really see that, are far more likely to survive than a company that's just is all about the bottom line and, you know, squeezing as much as they can out of their consumers.
So what is the brand's reason of being, and what was the, you know, initial little acorn or light bulb that, you know, brought it to market and turned it into a brand? And people want to hear that. And also, you know, online, where today the customer has a voice, you know, they can rate you on Google, they can communicate with you on Twitter or Instagram or any of these social platforms. And it's not about stifling their voice. It's about using the insight, whether it's negative or positive. It's about, you know, using what they're saying to leverage your own story, your own brand, and your own innovation pipeline.
Noop, thanks very much for chatting to me. I've really enjoyed it. So for anyone that wants to read your book or listen to your podcast, where should they go?
They can go to our website, splitsecondltd.com, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn.
1, 2, 3, listen.